Good morning, I'm Jennifer Allen with Wonders Within Reach. I'm a very tall white female wearing the same white sweater that I've worn for 3 days because I thought it would be hot in Savannah. I'm just introducing Kim Palmer and August Erickson of Miles Partnership. We did get a sneak peek into some of the stats yesterday, but excited for this deep dive to see what it means for disability travel. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and take it away.
All right, good morning, everybody. I am Kim Palmer from Miles Partnership. I am our program director for a program that we call Destination Optimization at Miles. I am a middle-aged white woman with dark hair, blue eyes, and kind of a fun white and purple paisley dress on today. And I'm joined by August Erickson, who is our accessibility program manager. Were all of you in our session on Friday where we introduced the research a little bit? Some of you have seen the intro. So the opportunity we have here today is to get into a little bit more detail with that data from the State of the American Traveler. So the State of the American Traveler Research Report is something that Miles Partnership has done hand in hand with destination analysts for almost 15 years now. And what we do is look for trends in the travelers in the United States. So this custom report is now a monthly survey. It is a representative sample of adult American travelers in each of the 4 regions of the United States. And it is tracking traveler sentiment in order to gain insights into domestic travel trends. So this particular survey we're talking about today was fielded in July of 2023, and there were 4,000 fully completed surveys across each of those regions. It was actually weighted to reflect the actual population of those regions. We do specialty editions of State of the American Traveler each quarter. We have a destinations edition where we dive into what destinations are a priority. A technology edition, our most recent one looked into the use of TikTok. And this is part of our traveler segments edition where we have looked at travelers with disabilities. We did a similar study back in 2021. And while we were originally asked to compare apples to apples in these 2 different research projects, it turns out we really have apples and pears, and wanted to be transparent about that because we were in July of 2021 in a very different place in the travel and tourism industry than we are today. That was the first post-COVID summer. Everyone was out there getting their revenge travel in. And that particular survey was looking, did not ask the travelers with disabilities any specific questions. We were asking questions around service and safety and the travel experience at that time. And really just broke that data into about 20% of the respondents to that survey indicated they had traveled either themselves or someone in their party with a disability. Now, fast forward to this year's survey, very different summer. Inflation is really starting to affect travel planning. The sort of revenge travel post-COVID trend is coming to an end. And we focused the study a little bit more on what the challenges folks with disabilities were experiencing in their travel. So the screening question was a little bit different. It asked folks to raise their hand if they had faced challenges during due to a physical, mental, or emotional issue while they traveled. So slightly different screening question there. We also asked 3 specific questions of the travelers with disabilities, and again, just really focused in on those challenges. So our 2023 highlights fall into 4 categories. And I push my button real fast there. Um, First of all, our travelers with disabilities are big dreamers. They are daydreaming about travel more frequently than the rest of the travel segment, but they are more limited by financial concerns and constraints. Social acceptance and support was rated the most difficult challenge while traveling. Online information for travelers with disabilities is perceived as good. There are a number of specialized websites in this area that still have a lot of room to increase their reach. And we would identify all travelers truly as hyper-informed, but even more so, travelers with disabilities have a higher reliance on social media and official travel planning resources, which is great for all of us from DMOs who are providing those official travel planning resources. So we have more time today to look at the actual data from this research, and my graphs are not all blown out of proportion. So you'll be able to read the data this time, so added bonus there. Also wanted to call out that this is the first time this data has been presented, and at milespartnership.com/travelability, you can download a research summary PDF to look at this more closely and share with your organization itself. So with that screening of asking if a physical, mental, or emotional issue for yourself or anyone you regularly travel with, have you faced difficulties or challenges? We had 16.4% of that group of 4,000 respond positively to that question. It was about 670 respondents that this is based on. We also asked for additional detail describing the issues that created their challenges. About 47% were folks with mobile and physical impairments, about 34% with psychological issues, and 23% with invisible disabilities. We also had vision, hearing, et cetera. From a demographic standpoint, this subset of the research was a very even mix of gender, ethnicity, and marital status from the larger group. Little surprising to me, I expected to see a lot more boomers, I think, in this response than we did. We actually saw a higher mix of millennial and Gen Z with a median age of about 44.4. A higher instance of LGBTQIA+, at 13.9%. Much more likely, 40% likely to travel with children, and a lower household income of around $75,000 versus $82,000 from all other travelers. As I mentioned, we asked this subset some specific questions in this research. One of them was we gave a list of 12 or 15 different challenges that may have been encountered with travel. Combination of things like using transportation, inconveniences, dining in restaurants, extra costs, and gave them a scale of very challenging, challenging, neutral, not challenging, and very not challenging. I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry, but you get the point. And so these were the ones that sort of elevated to the top, visiting attractions and events, using or getting around transportation hubs, social issues, public transportation, et cetera. Now, we asked a follow-up question of if you had to pick 3 of these that are the most challenging. This is the part that makes me sad and also inspires me to know that we have a lot more work to do, is that 46.4% said the leading challenge was social issues, stigma, and lack of empathy. So given all the technical considerations and price considerations, it is still empathy that is the biggest challenge for these travelers. In terms of travel characteristics, the travelers with disabilities are traveling about as frequently as all other travelers. with 3.3 trips on average versus 3.2. I call that about even. But I thought it was interesting that the travelers with disabilities skewed on the either end of that scale with a higher percentage having 5 trips or more and a higher percentage only having 0 or 1 trip in the next 12 months. Some other points out of the survey which travelers with disabilities ranked higher than other travelers, having taken a trip within the past 12 months. And I wanted to call out the 45% instance that travel ads do not reflect people like me. And I think that's been reiterated quite a bit in the sessions here today. But our travelers with disabilities are big dreamers. So this is a sort of a fun question. In the last week, have you daydreamed about taking a leisure trip? I mean, for me, like in the last day, absolutely yes. But I work in travel. So almost 59% of the travelers with disabilities said, yes, I have dreamed of a leisure trip in the last week, which is actually higher than all other travelers. Unfortunately, though, cost constraints and cost consciousness are really a barrier for the travelers with disabilities. This question was, has recent inflation in consumer prices led you to cancel an upcoming trip? And 46% of the travelers with disabilities said that was the case for them, versus only 30% of all other travelers. In addition, have high travel prices kept me from traveling in the past month? 59% agree or strongly disagree that prices have kept them from traveling, which is also higher than all other travelers. And in terms of travel budget, the travelers with disabilities had a lower budget of just over $2,900 for the year towards travel versus $3,600. Also, a higher instance, 32% of the respondents had a budget of under $1,000 for the year for travel. And I can certainly say $1,000 doesn't get us very far in our leisure trips, particularly this summer. Lastly, talking about the priorities that we have for our spending, travelers with disabilities rated travel as 47% being a high priority or an extremely high priority, which was lower than 54% of all travelers. And the low priority or extremely low priority was at 20%, which is also higher than all other travelers. So certainly cost and price are a big factor for our travelers with disabilities. Talking about online accessible travel information, 2 of the other custom questions we asked in this research. First was to rank the quality of information available online for disabled travelers. This was also a response that surprised me. I was expecting to get a fair to poor rating just based on things that I've seen or the lack of detail available on a lot of the major travel planning platforms for travelers with disabilities. But the respondents were almost 50% said good or excellent information was available online for disabled travelers. We also asked about a number of the accessibility-specific websites available and asked respondents whether they had used them to help plan their travel. And you can see most of these had, 20% or less of that group said that they had engaged with those websites. So at 58% using none of this particular subset, certainly a great opportunity for growth in reach for specialty websites for travelers with disabilities. So I'm going to turn it over to August to talk to us about reaching travelers with disabilities in a little more detail.
Thank you, Kim. My name is August, and I'm a white man in a gray suit. As we're all aware, today's travelers are hyper-informed, meaning they actively utilize a wide array of resources to plan their travel. As we can see on this graph, travelers with disabilities take this to a whole new level. Across all online resources, with the exception of travel-related apps, travelers with disabilities are more likely to utilize these online resources to plan their travel when compared to all other travelers. Again, this speaks to the necessity of creating high-quality digital content catered to travelers with disabilities. Travelers with disabilities also utilize social media platforms to plan travel at a higher rate than all other travelers. With that being said, the popularity of each social media platform utilized follows the same trend between both groups. On Friday, we mentioned that travelers with disabilities utilize Facebook at a substantially higher rate than all other travelers. The panel of travel influencers yesterday with Corey, Chelsea, Houston, and Jennifer were able to shed some light as to why that is, as travelers with disabilities frequently utilize peer-created Facebook groups to plan their travel. Travelers with disabilities also utilize offline or traditional media sources such as print, television, and radio at a higher rate than all other travelers. And finally, travelers with disabilities utilize official resources such as DMO websites and visitor guides at a higher rate than all other travelers. The takeaway here is that travelers with disabilities allocate more time and resources to travel planning when compared to all other travelers. The top 5 mediums that travelers with disabilities are most receptive to learning about new destinations to visit are Facebook, websites found via a search engine, which includes official DMO websites, email campaigns, online content, such as articles and blogs present on official DMO websites, and Instagram. All other travelers are most receptive to the same top 5 mediums, but in a different prioritized order. This slide speaks to the importance of ensuring your official destination websites and email campaigns are accessible to those with disabilities. On Friday, I provided a very high-level overview of the steps DMOs can take to ensure that their official websites and email campaigns are accessible to those with disabilities. I wanted to spend some time today diving into the first step, which is auditing your digital assets using the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG for short. When discussing digital accessibility, I frequently mention the carrot and the stick. The carrot being digital accessibility is altruistic, it's the right thing to do, and the stick being the potential legal ramifications. The legal landscape surrounding digital accessibility is murky, to say the least. The Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, was signed into law in 1990, and the first website went live on the internet in 1991. Fun fact, the first website that went live was just a guide on how to utilize the World Wide Web. Since 1996, the Department of Justice, or the DOJ, has taken the position or the stance that the ADA also applies to websites without providing any formal guidelines of what makes websites accessible. This is where the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, comes in. They were created by W3C, World Wide Web Consortium, which is a nonprofit organization with no government ties. Ultimately, they created WCAG to bridge the gap between the legal requirement and the lack of federal guidelines. At this point in time, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are internationally recognized and considered precedent. They're even mentioned by name on the official ADA website. The current version of WCAG is 2.1. However, 2.2 is expected to be finalized by the end of this month. 2.1 has been the standard since 2018. So this is a pretty major update. 2.2 introduces 9 new success criteria. The success criteria outlined in each version of WCAG are designed to remove digital barriers for individuals with disabilities and ensure digital content can be analyzed by assistive technology, such as screen readers. Each version of WCAG includes 3 separate conformance levels: A, which is the lowest, AA, which is mid-tier and the industry standard, and AAA. It is worth noting that AAA is unrealistic, and W3C clarifies that on their official website. So here's the million-dollar question. How do you analyze your digital content for WCAG conformance? We recommend analyzing through a combination of automated scans, which look for code or structure-based issues, and manual user testing. And manual user testing involves testing a website relying on keyboard navigation or keyboard navigation and a screen reader. This combination facilitates a more holistic approach of detecting the accessibility issues present on a website. Ultimately, these automated scans cannot detect all issues, which is why manual user testing is necessary. So you've successfully detected the issues on your website. How do you prioritize the remediations, actually correcting the issues present? Whether you're conducting remediations in-house or working with your web provider, we suggest breaking down remediation into 4 phases. The first phase being component-based remediations. Components are any element that are present on every single page on your website. So that would include your header, your footer, your cookie policy notice, etc. The second phase would be homepage remediations. Naturally, your homepage is going to be the most visited page on your website. Phase 3 is template-based remediations. So looking for accessibility issues at the template level for blogs, listing, profiles, etc. And the final phase, phase 4, is individual remediations. So issues present on a single web page. Take a water. I wanted to take a moment to discuss the curb cut effect, which is the phenomenon when something designed to benefit those with disabilities ends up benefiting the general population as a whole. The name comes from the curb cuts you see in sidewalks nationwide, originally designed for wheelchair users, but also utilized and appreciated by joggers, parents with strollers, bicyclists, etc. A prime example of the curb cut effect in digital accessibility is color contrast requirements, which were designed to benefit those who are colorblind. With that being said, color contrast requirements also benefit users with low quality monitors, users relying on devices with smaller screen sizes, and older users with deteriorating eyesight. Ultimately, by prioritizing digital accessibility, you're facilitating a better user experience for all. The last thing I want to mention is that digital accessibility should be seen as an ongoing initiative. It's not a one-time project. Modern websites are incredibly dynamic. New content is being added, existing content is being modified, third-party integrations are being added or updated, etc. Additionally, accessibility guidelines change over time. For example, WCAG 2.2 being introduced within the next 10 days. With that being said, stopping or pausing accessibility initiatives is an incredibly short-sighted decision. As a reminder, we have 2 major webinars on the state of the American traveler coming up, which includes the full report on the research presented today. On August 29th, we'll be reviewing different traveler segments, including a deeper dive into travelers with disabilities, foodies, and travelers who have an annual household income of $200,000 or more. On November 7th, we'll be reviewing the Sustainable Travel and Destination Management Edition. You can register for both webinars by visiting milespartnership.com/SAT. You can review the research presented today and a range of other resources by visiting milespartnership.com/travelability. You can also scan the QR code present on the slide. Thank you everyone so much for your time, and I believe we may have a little time left over for Q&A. 5 minutes, thank you. With that being said, I would love to have the questions more focused on digital accessibility, given that the full research is available on our website.
Thank you. So you, Jessica with Destinations International. So I know when you were talking about color contrast requirements, what does that particularly mean? So we all have our various brand colors.
Right.
So is it that brand colors that probably need to be updated, or is it just the layout itself?
It's a great question. So it's text against a background. So foreground against a background. For large text, the ratio has to be 3:1. And for normal text, the ratio has to be 4.5:1. It's actually one of my favorite accessibility requirements, as you can actually quantify it. And there's limitless online tools that'll actually allow you to put in the hex codes or the RBG codes for the foreground and background to measure that. 4.5:1 for large text, which is 26 pixels or 18 pixels if the font weight is bold, so font weight 700, 3.1 for large text, my apologies, which is 24 pixels or 18 pixels if the font weight is bold, and 4.5:1 for normal text. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was also surprised to see excellent and good for accessibility information. I think, and my insight on that, the reason is that people are answering based on their expectations. When I've seen the question phrased differently about is it sufficient to plan my trip, the percentages are much lower. And so it's sort of an issue about how you answer the question. The other thing is a lot of these studies are from the disabled traveler perspective and sort of their awareness and their expectations. But there are ways to measure versus international standards, which is a different approach. And I think there's been a bit of a gap there in the way that things are analyzed. And so if there is any destination that wants sort of an objective look about how good is your accessibility information right now, I'm going to throw my colleague Amy under the bus and I'll say she can help you with it to actually look at that from an objective standpoint for anybody that needs it.
That's a great point, John. John and Amy, we'd love to meet you guys after this to continue that discussion.
Hi, thank you. This is for the first speaker. I was curious, you were sharing information about the top 3 priorities of disability travelers, with social issues being their first concern. I didn't catch the other 2. I was curious if you could go back.
Ooh, yes, can we?
It was a little while ago. Thank you so much. It seemed pretty important.
I believe it was transportation related, and I think it was access to attractions and transportation, but my memory may not be 100%.
So was that phrased as
There
the
we go.
biggest concerns or what they would like to be improved?
The most challenging aspects of
What
travel.
was the most challenging? So it was visiting attractions or events and using or getting around transportation hubs.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hi, Amy with Sage Inclusion. I have a question about your statistical data. You have 16%, I think you said, of the disabled travel market. And here we've heard 20% and 35%. How did you guys come to your number?
So
Self-identifying.
this is the, sorry.
No, you're good, sorry.
Okay. So first of all, the State of the American Traveler screens for if you have traveled in the last 12 months. So to start with, it is not all Americans. It is only Americans who have traveled in the last 12 months. So that takes that number down a little bit. And then the question this year specifically asked whether you faced a challenge due to a disability while traveling, which I feel like when we did it a couple of years ago, the screening question was a little bit different, which just said, did you travel with yourself or someone in your party having a disability, versus, I think one of the things I found in this is the nuance of asking whether or not you felt like you were challenged versus whether you just traveled with someone with a disability is a little bit nuanced. In 2021, 20% was the respondents. This year it was 16. So I think that is a combination of looking at a subset of just folks who have traveled and a little bit about how the question was asked.
Okay, we do have to wrap it up now. Are you available for follow-up questions after?
Yes, we are here rest of the day.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing.